So here we are. We're going to do a basic demo as opposed to a full tutorial. And I just basically want to put a few things together that we've seen so you can see how they all work in unison of each other. So right now I have 3 layers. I have the background layer, which is just a solid color. So just a layer solid. The next one is the logo. That's just what says Holiday Wars there. The next one is the snowflake. What we're going to do is we're going to put the snowflake off screen. We're going to have it swoosh down, come around, and then land right on the eye. So nothing too crazy. So I'm just going to put it right off. I'm going to go down here, transform tools. I'm going to hit record on position. I'm going to move it up a little bit in the timeline. Let's see, this is 10 seconds. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. So probably maybe the whole thing will probably be about 5 seconds long anyway. I'm going to scoot up just a little bit. I'm going to have it come on screen. I'm going to go up a little bit more. I'm going to have it come on screen. Go up a little bit more. And have it come loop around. Come around a little bit more. Around and move it ahead in the timeline. Right now we're almost at 3 seconds. So 3 seconds we'll have it finish right where it's supposed to finish at. So as you can see, this is the kind of path it's going to take as we animate this graphic, right? It's going to come in, loop around, and finish there. One of the nice things about the path is that it's adjustable after I've done it. For example, I could grab this handle point and I can adjust the curves. Now, if I want it smoother, I can loop it around that way. I can adjust this, pull it in. This one up here looks a little bit too sharp, so I'm just going to kind of curve it out because I want it to be kind of a swoosh type flavor. This one we're going to curve, and we'll curve it that way. Move it up a little bit more. So I'm just trying to show you guys that your paths are adjustable after the fact. You aren't set in stone once you do it. And what'll probably happen too is, like, I may think, okay, this is probably about a good setup. Then I go and watch the RAM preview and be like, oh gosh, this curve does not work. I need to fix it. So speaking of which, let me drop my down to a quarter. So it's to be nice sloppy looking, but I should get an idea of what it looks like. I'm gonna do a quick RAM preview. What do you think? Well, for starters, this happens way too fast, especially this first bit. So we're just going to grab our keyframes. I'm just going to drag them down the timeline. And that right there alone will slow it down. I'm just going to have a keyframe almost on every second. I also think it's too whoosh, whoosh. Kind of want it to smooth it out. So we're going to adjust this keyframe, and we're going to curve it the other way, right? Let's go RAM preview. Better. It's a little too slow from what I want, so I'm just going to, guess what? Move the keyframes closer together. Still much better than the first time. I also think it's going too far out of edge, so I'm going to bring these in just a tad. RAM preview. For what we're doing today, I'm kind of okay with that. Partially because I'm going to be animating other aspects of it too, so it's not that big of a deal. So that's the position. It's going to follow this track and end there. what I want to do next. I'm going to play around with scale. So I'm going to hit the record and scale. I'm at the start. I'm going to make this just a little bit bigger. We're going to go up to, let's try 120. So that one, it's at this key point, yeah, it's nice and big. Nice and big. I'll move this up. And then we hit about this point, I think I'm going to start having it shrink. So we're animating scale, right? If I automatically shrink this right now, what it means is that everything in between here will be the snowflake shrinking. I don't want that. I want the snowflake to stay the same size and not start shrinking until here. Well, how do I do that? I'm going to zoom in real quick. And you see this little knob? Oops. All I'm going to do is click it, and it's going to add a new keyframe. So what I did is I just added a new keyframe saying, hey, at this time, have the scale be this. Okay? And then I'm going to move one frame ahead. I'm going to make a new keyframe. So it's almost like, let me zoom out. So from here to here is almost like one animation, and then I'm going to make a second animation here. So from this keyframe to, oops, from this keyframe to the end, which ends right there, I'm going to shrink it down now. So again, so from this keyframe to that keyframe, it'll be shrinking. And from this keyframe to this keyframe, it won't be. Let's give it a look. RAM preview. Then it starts to shrink, and boop. It's a little chunky, mind you, but you get an idea of how you can use both, scale and position at the same time to get an animation effect. Speaking of effects, why don't we have a little more fun and add an effect? Wouldn't that be cool? In this case, I'm going to add a flare. To get that, I just type flare, generate flare. Now, I already know ahead of time that for the lens flare to work, I need to use it on a solid layer. So I'm going to go ahead and close my layers. I'm going to lock these puppies so I don't screw them up. I'm going to make a new solid. So new solid. We'll call this lens flare. Black's fine, color doesn't really matter. With the layer selected, I'm just going to double click the lens flare. Boom, I have a lens flare. How does the lens flare work? Basically, the lens flare works is that you have a center of the flare, and then I can adjust how the flare moves and shifts and so forth. Right? So in thinking of animating, I can animate it so it goes from here and swishes in close. So if we're thinking about the snowflake, let's say the snowflake's really bright, I could have this flare, swish across the screen right when the snowflake swishes across the screen. Right? That might work. Might look neat. Might look like crap. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. We're just kind of demonstrating and playing around for fun. But if you notice, when I add the lens flare, everything else disappeared. Oh my gosh. That's so horrible. I can't see the rest of my project. I know it's there because when I hide that layer, it appears. So what do? Well, what I can do is right here I have a thing called mode. And this is just like Photoshop. These are blending modes. In fact, look, it even says blending mode. If you don't see this, you should be able to right-click on this, I don't know, this horizontal line and select columns and make sure your modes is turned on. Another way to get to it is if you just select the right, or select lens flare and right-click it and go to blending styles. And then you have all the basic blending styles, almost exactly the same as Photoshop. In this case, I'm going to go to add. And it's adding the brightest of the two layers together. So that's why now the lens flare looks like it's on my logo, even though it's on its own solid. There's a few complications here because, for example, let's say I were to animate the lens flare layer itself, the position. I'm not actually moving the flare, notice? I'm just moving the layer over. I think that was at 60. So if I want to actually animate the flare, I need to come up here to my effects control panel, or I need to go down here onto the timeline. Let me zoom out real quick. So I'm at the start of the timeline. At the start of the timeline, where do I want the flare? I probably want the flare over here somewhere. In this case, I'm gonna just grab and drag it. I'm gonna hit record on the lens flare. Snowflake's gonna come in, swish across, go there. You know what? Since this whole thing's 5 seconds long, I don't think I want a lens flare up there for 5 seconds. I think I probably only went there for a few seconds. So we'll just go like a 1 second flare. And we want it to go from this side to the other side. So I'm just going to grab the center, drag it across. So if I preview it, preview. See? Boom. Lens flare. I didn't drag it far enough away. That's why it's still showing on the side of the screen. And I also don't think it comes in at the right point. Maybe like right there. Right when it starts shrinking is probably where I would want it to come in. That's an easy fix. All I got to do is just take that layer, the lens flare layer, and drag it over. So now the layer starts there. See? Just kind of, it's not there. And it's going to start, and then whoosh. Let's see what that looks like. Whoosh. Again, I would have had it keep going so you know it disappears completely, and it would the start would be smoother. But you get the basic idea of how you can use effects in unison of animations and images. So that's the basic, just quick demo of how you can kind of put it all together.